Hello and welcome to the next instalment of our Coffee Break UI series. My name is Shelley Wreford and today I'm going to be talking to you about measurement and data collection in quality improvement projects. Let's begin. In this session we're going to explore what measurements you need to consider for your projects, at what point in your QI project you need to start thinking about these measurements, how to ensure your measures are clear, the key principles you need to consider when planning your data collection, and the tools you can use to collect your data. Let's first turn our attention to what you should be measuring in your QI project. For those of you who have been following our Coffee Break QI videos, this image of the model for improvement should be starting to look very familiar to you now. To recap, the first question, what are we trying to accomplish, aims to set out your shared goal, that is, to state explicitly why you're all in the room and what you're working towards. The second question, how will we know if a change is an improvement, ensures that we are objectively measuring whether or not we are working towards achieving our intentions. The third question, what change can we make that will result in an improvement, pushes us to think about how we're going to work differently to bring about the improvement that we've set out to achieve. And finally, the last step in the model for improvement, the PDSA cycle, which creates opportunities for us to learn and builds our confidence in our change ideas that we are testing. In the Model for Improvement framework, each individual step fits together to form the whole, which is why you need to start thinking about measurement at the very beginning of your quality improvement journey. You cannot be clear about what you are trying to do without knowing whether or not you're actually doing it. And the way we know whether or not we are actually doing it is through the measurement of our improvement efforts. In other words, you need to have measures that are intrinsically linked to your aim. This principle of knowing exactly what you are measuring and why needs to be established from the start, which is why making decisions about your measurement plan at the same time as you are doing all your thinking about the first question is so important. If you get this bit right, the data you collect for your project will feed back into your aim and be of use in terms of building learning for improvement. Given that quality improvement projects are usually concerned with knotty problems requiring a combination of multiple solutions, it is unlikely that a single measure will capture your learning or answer the second question in the model for improvement, how we know if a change is an improvement. This is why in quality improvement projects we use a group or a family of key measures. Once you've established what your family of measures is going to be, you need to set about clearly defining the parameters of each of those measures. In other words, you need to establish your operational definitions. Operational definitions are an important aspect of measurement in quality improvement projects. They give communicable meaning to a concept by being very clear about how the concept will be applied within a particular set of circumstances. Operationally defining your measurement includes thinking about what your method for measuring is going to be. This might include thinking about which device you might use to collect your data or what your starting and endpoints are going to be. You also need to be clear about your criteria for judgment, for example, what counts as late or as an error. Having this level of clarity improves the consistency of your measurement because it reduces variation in how each measure is understood, applied and replicated. Consistency of measurement is important in quality improvement projects because if data is understood and or collected differently, it makes it hard to know whether changes in data are due to the changes tested or from inconsistencies in the data collection. To ensure you're all singing from the same hymn sheet, it is good practice to develop and agree the operational definitions for each measure with the whole project group early on in your QI project. In the previous slide, we talked about establishing what you are measuring and why at the beginning of your QI project. This includes collecting data before any improvement efforts begin, so you can see how a system or process is working before you change anything. Baseline data, where possible, is helpful in terms of helping you understand whether any changes you are making are leading to an improvement. In quality improvement, we talk about data over time. This is as opposed to just measuring at the beginning and end of your QI project. The latter is a use of measurement and data for judgment. In QI, we are much more concerned with measurement and data for learning. The more regularly you can collect the data for your measures, the better equipped you are to understand which, if any, changes you are making are helping you improve on the problem you have identified. We will return to this principle of collecting data over time later on in this coffee break video when we explore the tools you can use to collect your data. Now you've established your project measures and clearly defined them, the next step is to plan how you're going to collect your data. To do this, there are a few key things to consider. The first is your sample. Who or what are you collecting data for? When you are thinking about who or what might make up your sample, you need to consider sampling methods. There are several different ways of sampling for data collection, which if you've been involved in research before, you will likely have come across. Although I'm not going to go into the approach in great depth today, it's worth knowing that there are three main sampling methods used in quality improvement. Probability sampling, for example, simple random sampling, non-probability sampling, for example, convenience sampling, and no sampling at all. The method you choose will be determined by the scope of your project and the measurement you need the data for. You may have answered some of these questions as part of operationally defining your measures. When we think about who or what we're including in our sample, we also need to think about the size of our sample. You need a big enough sample so that you have enough data to track any improvement, but not so big that collecting data becomes an overly onerous task. Crucially, we're not going to always be able to collect data for everything, particularly if data collection is going to be manual and time-consuming, nor do we need to. In QI, we often talk about good enough to demonstrate improvement and build confidence in ideas and changes, different to research in that way. The size of your sample will also likely be determined by the frequency of the event you're measuring. If the event is infrequent, you may want to consider a bigger sample, as frequent as possible for best learning, so whatever allows you to do that. Once you've defined your sample, the next step is to consider how often and for how long you're going to collect the data for. The frequency in which you collect your data is a crucial aspect for consideration when planning your data collection. Frequency of data collection in quality improvement just means how often you will look at the process or system to see the variation that exists there. How often you look and measure will largely depend on how often the event happens. If the event you're measuring is infrequent, you may have to have bigger intervals between your periods of data collection. For frequent or more regular events, you could even consider continuous monitoring. Whether you're collecting data every hour, every day, once a week or once a month, much like with sample size, you need to collect data regularly enough so that you have enough data to learn and or to track any improvement, but not so regularly that collecting the data becomes an overly onerous task. In terms of how long you need to continue collecting data, the duration will depend on which stage you're at with your project. Regular ongoing data collection at the start of your project and whilst you are carrying out your tested change will help you understand the system and give you confidence in the changes that you are testing. You may want to continue collecting data on an ongoing basis until you've reached your specified target or goal. And then towards the end of your project and beyond, you may want to conduct periodic audits instead to check you are holding the gains. In terms of where you might get your data from, where possible, try and use existing data available. This is particularly useful for your outcome measures because you're going to be collecting data for these measures for the life of the project and potentially beyond. Where it is not possible to use data already being collected elsewhere, keep data collection as simple as possible. There are two main basic forms, check sheets and recording forms. Check sheets are simply forms for recording data from a project or process in pre-established categories when values are known. Check sheets can be used to check off whether something has been included, happened, or if an error has occurred. For example, safety courses, maps of areas, process lists. Whether these checklists are held on paper or on Excel, it doesn't really matter, though visible paper checklists can be a great way to communicate what's happening in real time with a wider team, whereas records kept in Excel can be easily turned into run charts. The advantages of checklists is that they're simple and easy to use. Potential disadvantages are that unless the values are carefully planned and agreed prior to collecting data, they can cause confusion later on down the line if people fill them in differently. Recording forms are another useful tool for collecting data and are most appropriate when the values to be recorded are not known in advance of the data collection activity. In other words, the user must write the information down, not just check it off. Sometimes improvement efforts require more descriptive data than just count or classification. We might want to know about measurements, size, length, or temperature, for example. QI projects looking to improve flow, for example, may benefit from collecting data related to specific waiting times on a recording form. As well as being dependent on whether the values being measured are known, another important factor influencing data collection is whether your data is quantitative or qualitative. Qualitative data is the descriptive and conceptual findings. It allows us to explore ideas further and explain quantitative results. Qualitative data is often easy to collect and is highly informative. Examples where qualitative data could be used could be used is in a project looking at improving patient and family satisfaction. For example, you could ask patients and their families about their lived experience of the discharge process. In summary, make sure you have key outcomes that are intrinsically linked to your aim. Make sure you develop these measures at the start of your project and think about your sample, size, and how long you will collect data for. Use operational definitions to help clarify the parameters of your measures. Collect data regularly throughout the life of your project and consider using both qualitative and quantitative data. And remember, improvement is not just about measurement. You cannot fatten a cow by weighing it. However, without measurement, you don't know you're improving and you'll never be able to answer question 2 of the model for improvement. Many thanks for listening to the Coffee Break QI video today. If you want more help, please keep your eyes peeled for our next coffee break sessions. Details will follow. You can also email us at bismfht.qualityimprovement@nhs.net or find us on Connect. Equally, our Twitter handle is @bismfhtqi. Many thanks for your time.